So thank you so much for joining. Okay, pleasure to have you here. And I know you are totally data background. And this session, I am very much looking into it because this is one of the session where we will talk freely about data, no specific topic. So just for my audience, can you please introduce yourself and then we will move forward.
Yes, I am Maarten van der Heijden. That's the full name. And I have always been in data actually since my university studies, where I did history and the economic history, and I stayed in my opinion, I always stayed in the same by being first working in IT pretty soon after, and then so network maintenance and things like that. But immediately I was also doing reporting, and that grew into becoming a data engineering architect now at Tata Steel in the Netherlands, which is one of the big steel companies of the world, and quite interesting, and a great diversity of types of data, which also is something you don't see that often. And I have never been actually in a consulting role. I always was part of the company, and that creates quite a different view on data from what the most consultants have, in my experience.
Okay, so it'll be a great discussion because most of my career I have been a consultant. And
Yeah.
Tata is an Indian-based company. I've worked with Satyam, I've worked with HCL. So most of my career, I was a consultant, and since last 6 odd years, I have come towards the other side of the table, which is your side. And I totally agree with you that once you come on the other side of the table, it's a totally different. Yeah, please go ahead. I think our topic is very philosophical, data angle, how you look into it. I'm very much interested to learn. I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot from you. And
I hope. Would
yeah,
be nice.
yeah, because I want to hear from you that because my background is also totally data background. So
Yeah,
floor is all yours.
yeah.
Let's start our discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the interesting things of being internal is that you have the discussion with the people, not so much about how to model the data, because you're actually expected to know more or less, because you're expected to know the organization. But the discussion is far more about what the data is and how it can be interpreted. And that is a hugely complex world, because data actually is our interpretation all over the place. Uh, we actually, if we speak, we use words, and any word you use is already an abstraction of reality, but it's an abstraction in my mind, and then it moves to you, and you have to abstract it according to your understanding of the same, which is quite a jump to make. And what we see is that people are very easy at accepting data at face value, which is the value they see, they understand from their end, and not so much uh, the meaning at creation time, which actually is the only meaning that is sure. Every other meaning is an interpretation beyond it.
Agree on that. So I have come across my own definition of data, which let me lay down in front of you because you are a veteran of data. It'll be good to take a feedback from you. So the definition I have come up with is properties and behavior of an entity is data. And of course, behavior can be two type. One is internal behavior by the entity itself, and second is external behavior, which other people use that entity to do something. Example, car. Car is has four tires, it has own properties and attributes, it has seats, it has color, it has engine. That's its These are its properties. Now, behavior, car runs this much of kilometer, it can do this oil change. That's internal behavior. External behavior is third party, external parties buy the car, they race the car, they brand the car, a lot of things. So for
Yeah,
me, that's what I have come up with. Your feedback on that.
yeah. It is even worse because it is the abstraction of the properties and behaviors.
Hmm.
Because data is just data. It's not the reality itself.
Okay. Okay.
It is a way to describe the reality, but it is my description. If I create the data, I give my description, and
Mhm.
it is then up to the user of the data how he or she takes that data on and interprets my description of the properties and behavior.
Your description, but isn't it like we always start with an entity? Because when you talk about data, it is about something, and that about something is an entity.
Yeah, but it is not the entity itself. It is the
Yes, it,
description I gave.
I agree. So it's not an entity, it's about the entity.
Yes.
It's about the entity. So every organization, like steel, is an entity, right?
Yeah.
Organization is an entity. Every domain, every business process have their own entities. So first of all, you have to find out, for me, is an entity, and then talk about that entity. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Description about an entity, what it is about, it's become its property or attributes, right?
Yeah. And then the next step is that you do the input of data to communicate. So then there is the reader of what you have created. And
Correct.
at reader end, you have a new interpretation of your data.
Which is, in my belief, in my point of view, is behavior, right? So a car again, when you, okay, let's take an example of steel. Your steel, right?
Yeah.
Steel is something you buy and sell. You put it
Yes.
somewhere, you use it, you make transactions of on it. There are different dimensions of steel, different qualities of quality. Well, qualities went into properties, but when
Yeah.
you sell and buy, it become a transaction. So that become behavior,
Yeah.
external behavior for the entity. I think
Yeah.
we're on the same page actually. It's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. But for me, it's quite important to be aware of the fact that there is this layer of understanding that is on two ends, because I understand it and try to describe it, and you understand it and try to use the data as a
Absolutely.
KPI maker or something like that. So that is this first layer of uh, abstraction that I think is very important, because if I create data, I do that for a purpose. I do that in probably in tooling that also has a purpose thought out by the maker of it. So I have to align these two purposes when I use the application.
Agree on that. So if I take an example, you are absolutely spot on, right? Because for example, a gun, right? For a person in an army or forces, the usage of a gun different. But if you are keeping a gun at home for your self security, is a different. So you're absolutely right. An entity can be, of course, the properties of entities always remain static, little bit change based on the different addition of features. But the usage, that depends who is using what. Then those you're saying
Yeah,
descriptions come into action. I
who
absolutely agree.
is who is using what and for what.
Fall
Because
down. Yeah.
if you use the gun to just to for fun to shoot at some target, that's something completely different than shooting out in the street at cars, people, and anything else.
Hmm. Absolutely agree with you. So we are
And
saying,
it's both shooting.
yeah, yeah. So external behavior for the entity can be different based on the user and for which purpose that person is using. Absolutely agree with you.
Yeah. And who is the target in this case? Is a quite poignant one.
Yeah. So if we go towards next step, right, of data, right? So we have discussed the basics of data, which because even if you go onto Wikipedia, it gives you a very difficult definition of data. In fact,
Yeah.
people says whatever is happening in the world, whatever you are doing, it's data. Yes, that's not wrong. It is, but that's not the actual definition of the data. So I think
It is
what
not how you work with it, at least. That is the point.
that is the point. So
Yeah.
if you go towards the next step, right, which I think we have touched base is domains of data. Like financial domain is different, banking domain is different, oil and gas different. How do you look from this angle?
Yeah, and there are a lot of angles to look at talking about types of data.
Hmm.
Uh, the whole IT actually started based on financial data. It's interesting to keep that in mind. That was the core of the use of data.
Get to make decisions, yeah.
Yeah, financial decisions were everything, and that is where it started. And that is still something you can recognize in the way, though less and less, thank God, but you can recognize that in the way people look at data. For instance, data quality. For financials, that is a very clear subject because we know since 1300s how you should interpret financial bookings. But all the other stuff uh, came in much later and is far more complex to understand.
Agree on that. So if we go take this thing, financial data, which is a data, of course. So there is two kind of data, which is generated by the business itself or the user, as you mentioned, financial. Someone is entering the data, right? That is where structured data comes in. So the behavior is which you are entering, and then when you transform it for certain purposes. So there are two, I don't know how to categorize it because there are if we say type is structure, semi-structure, and unstructured. I do
Yeah.
not know how to categorize this one which you enter, the one which you transform. How do you see these two kind of categories?
Um, Yeah, the structured data is and that is one of the problems I see. Structured data in finance is very clear and very strict and very we all know or can know how to deal with it, even in subsequent combinations, aggregations, etc. They are standardized. Um, then you have the semi or the fairly structured. A typical case in point is the data that is generated by production systems in a steel factory, where measurements are flying all over the place every tenth of a second or hundredths of a second. And they are used, they are then stored, sometimes aggregated. Uh, so there is a structure in the sense that you know that this sensor is measuring this, but there is no or very little uh, combination of those structures. one sensor does it every second, one does measures every hundredth of a second, and you don't have a table that contains it all. So that makes it quite interesting and quite different. And then next step is something like, for instance, measuring the in a steel factory. You can have drones that measure how much raw materials are on your terrain of every kind. They fly over, they make pictures, they make a point cloud to make sure that you know what it is, how much it is, and then that is your measurement, which is one step further from the structured data, though it is structured again, but it is structured only again after it has been seen by a camera. And then you have the actual pictures, which is called unstructured data, with good reason from a database point of view. But from our IT point of view, it is of course structured because it has a certain way of storing, which is logical, because otherwise we couldn't read it. We have a binary system. But it is called unstructured for good reasons from a point of view of the user of the data.
Actually, you have brought up a very good point, right? Even in my book, when I'm defining structured, semi-structured, and unstructured, one of the example I've given in structured, that if you already know in an image that what section of the image is what. For example, human picture. If your metadata, I'm going towards metadata now. If you have a very good metadata defined and you already know that hundreds of thousands of pictures are going to come for a human and a male, then you already know with the certain dimension, okay, the picture will be this diagrams, diameter or whatever length and width, and it will be taken from a certain distance. If you already know that, now when you run cognitive services on it, you already know that where is nose, where are eyes, and you can. So for me, it become a kind of structured because your metadata is so strong, it's already telling you the basic stuff.
Yeah,
Yes, now you end up having people, a group photos here and there, far and near. Then for me, that become unstructured because you do not know what is. So what you say about that?
yeah, it depends if you have tooling around that can recognize faces, then that also is a kind of point cloud
Yep.
that is created on the face. As long as the faces are visible enough, you actually have a kind of structured data as soon as you use this point cloud.
Yeah, yeah. So now,
And the point you make, and that is actually quite one of the more interesting things, which also goes into email and all documents, etc. That is that if you want to know what you can get from a picture or a document, you actually need a kind of taxonomy.
yeah,
So a limited list of subjects that you expect to work with, so that you can choose from that and then use the choice to further investigate your unstructured data. It is actually what happens in a library, which of course is something that I, as a historian, have visited quite a lot.
yeah. So coming towards this metadata thing, right? Can you elaborate the importance of metadata, of course, which includes taxonomies and
Yeah.
ontologies as well. What is the importance of metadata in the world of data?
I would say it this way. If you don't have metadata, you don't have data. If you don't know what your data is, if you don't understand the context of your data, then you don't have data.
Greatly put, actually. This is true for structured data as well, right?
Yeah, most of all, because structured data actually, we structure data to make sure that we don't need to write too much. Otherwise, we would have to write a story. But the story is in the application, which has its context description. And without this context description, you actually shouldn't try to understand the data, because if you get a number like 42, you don't know what it is. Maybe if I say it's a temperature, you still don't know.
Absolutely right. If you have an ID of an employee or ID of a person, and you do not define whether this person is an employee or a customer of the same organization, right? In insurance or in a bank, I can have a bank account inside the bank and I can be employee of the bank. Maybe I can be a loan guy who has taken a loan. Many other things can happen if we don't even define. And
And
this is,
you could
yeah, you won't know.
you could even be the person selling the pencils they need.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. See, that's why one of the places I also wrote this, that if you have even on structure, see, semi-structure and unstructured, semi is still okay. Unstructured, if you don't have a metadata, then you're totally done. There's no question about it. But even in structure, right? People don't people don't pay attention on the metadata. For what I feel is, if we have a proper metadata, especially business metadata,
Mhm.
we can, or organizations can reduce 80% of their dashboards and reports. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I might even fully disagree with you in this,
Okay.
in the sense that you need your metadata far more when you have a database,
Hmm.
because you have tried to write as little as you could. So only one number I have entered, 42. It is a temperature, and I know that this value is Fahrenheit.
Hmm.
It could also be Kelvin or Celsius.
So you're saying it's more than 80%. Okay. Okay.
So that with 42 Kelvin, it's quite freezing,
Yeah.
and with 42 Celsius, it's quite hot. And
Correct.
42 Fahrenheit is about my winter temperature today.
So you're saying it's very important to have a metadata for structured data as well.
Yeah, so you have to have a pretty big context. The funny thing is, at the moment that you look at a picture, you create the metadata,
Hmm.
because you look at a picture and you make something out of it based on your life experience.
Hmm.
So for you, you have your metadata, and it depends entirely on your experience. So one picture can be interpreted completely differently by two persons, but still they have all the metadata they want to see.
Correct. So it's this same old example. Is not about hitting the hammer. It's about where to hit the hammer, right?
Yes,
And until
exactly.
you don't
That
have,
is that is where the price lies. That's what you pay for.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great, right? That the importance of metadata, which most of the organizations do not understand, is still lacking. And since Gen AI has come into picture, now this metadata is surfacing like anything. And if you ask me, based on my different kind of experiences, I feel in coming times, we might not, or okay, let me put it more optimistically, that we might end up using actual data only maybe 5% or 10%. And I think 90-95% we will be playing with the metadata, because traditional raw data is going to become so huge, especially unstructured, so huge that we might not end up having technologies to hit it. Yeah, tool will be having, but the moment you go into a raw and hit it, your consumption and your compute power will be so expensive that we will not have any other choice defining the metadata for each and every bit of data and just play with the data. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and it hasn't changed that much, which is funny. Um, when I bought my first computer, it was a 64K computer with a 360 floppy disk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Amazing. And I made the calculation. Today we have a lot bigger computers.
Hmm.
We have a lot more storage. But actually, the relatively, we didn't improve any. So if I get my data for my reports now, I get millions of rows if I don't take care.
Hmm.
And uh, it is due to that very important to know your metadata, to know how you limit your data. So maybe you would now ask your AI, your LLM, to investigate the data and give me some suggestions on how to limit my data before I start using it.
Yeah, even AI is limited and struggling, especially Gen AI, because the chat GPT which we have right now is being trained on a generic taxonomies and ontologies. Right
Exactly.
now, when you end up throwing your finance data into it or banking data into it, 40 to 30 to 40% results are not accurate, because those data are not trained onto the domain taxonomies and ontologies. So
Yeah.
you have to have your own, somewhere or the other, you have to define your metadata. There's no runaway from
No, 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 there isn't.
it.
It's impossible to do without. Yeah.
Yeah, so let me bring the angle of data quality, right? Because since yes, in structured data, and most of the structured data we know is being generated from OLTP. And when we talk about OLTP, we know what we are punching in. The only way to have a bad data or a dirty data, I would say, because bad data has a different definition. So for a dirty data is either you have a wrong person who is punching in wrong values, or your application is not designed in such a way that it can stop junk data going in. That's the only two ways, right? Maybe that's where structured data gets dirty, right? But when we talk about unstructured data, wow. So that definition of putting dirty data into it is no more there, because unstructured is unstructured. You can write it is, for example, remarks, for example, feedback. It is bound to have dirty data, right? Now you have to dig correct context from here. So what do you think about data quality standards in structure versus unstructured eco world?
Yeah, in structured data, data quality, one interesting point, quality is about two aspects. It's cost, what is the cost of getting the right quality, and it is about the level of the quality.
Yeah.
And the cost often is ignored by people because it has to be good, no matter how, but it has to be good, which is quite impossible. Then in OLTP, that's the only place where data can have quality, actually. It is the moment of creation. There it is valid or it is invalid for the purpose of creation.
Yeah. Most of
Any use after that, if you want to have good data quality for purpose A, you will probably destroy the data quality for purpose B.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that is also something many people are not quite aware of. They think I need to have, as the manager of the sales department, all the orders that have been delivered. So that way I can see what my company has sold. But my colleague, who is managing a number of sales internal salespeople, wants to see how many orders were incomplete, because you want to understand what went wrong there. So that's two sales managers already who need different data. The one needs only the data of orders that were finalized, and the other only wants the data of orders that were not. And they're in one department. Well, if that can be so different, then don't try even to make your data right if it isn't for the OLTP purpose.
Yeah. So what we are saying here, data quality standards or implementations should be based on the business requirements, or usually based on the use case for which you are using data. As you correctly mentioned, one
Yeah, and then you have to consider the cost, because if you have to create a separate data mart for manager A and manager B, then the cost is going berserk.
correct. So you cannot have 100% quality, is very subjective, right? That
Yes,
you can have everything fixed for every use case. You cannot have.
impossible. So you have really to look into the value of a use case if you start doing anything to the data after it has been created. Handle with care, I say.
So let me add an angle from the C level. So as part of my podcast, we are doing I have few folks, 6, 7 folks, data industry, and I would love to have you as part of our panel discussion as well, which is happening every quarterly.
Mhm.
Since December come into picture, now we are having this one in March. Our next topic is on CDO and CAO. What, because the one of the most moving role right now is CDO role. So one of the post was happening on LinkedIn, where people were discussing why CDOs keep moving so fast, right? Keep changing because it's one of a job which keep changing after every 2 3 years. So discussion went on, and what I commented was that, in my point of view, most of the CDOs are not from data background, and maybe they are from sales background, maybe they are from finance background. That is the reason once they come in, see, the same example I'll put it here is, again, I've put it many times, that Superman idea was there in 1940s, but still human are unable to fly. So ideas can be there. You can come up with super good use case who can benefit $1 million for an organization, but if it is not on the ground doable, it won't fly. So I think that's what I commented over there. But someone commented back is 50% of CDOs are data background, and the failure is because data background CDOs spend more time and money on data quality rather than use case. Which again I will disagree, because if the person is from data background, for us, yes, we love data, but for us, it's still the use case and business value is the top priority. Then data foundation come into picture. What do you say about that?
Um, yeah, that true. And data value is something that is created by the user at use time and not by the data people at creation or build time of a data warehouse.
Hmm.
It is beyond our reach. The good part is I have been in reporting for quite some time, so I had and KPIs and things like that. And that is the field where you learn that it's hopeless to create good data. And you're always looking for people who know what the data is. So having a good business glossary and a taxonomy combined, if possible, or ontology, whatever you call it, is quite essential if you want to have useful usage and fast usage of your data. And that is the most important part. It's more important that it is used than that it is good.
Absolutely, yes. So you have brought another very key item is KPI. So even in my book where I have 300 data topics, rather than I started with what is data, I started with decision support system and KPIs. For our audience, can you elaborate this piece? Because for me, again, if you don't have KPIs, no use of creating data. Data has no value until you don't have KPIs or someone
I
who wants
totally,
it.
I totally disagree on that one in the
Oh,
sense that
again,
these
okay,
days, with the AI possibilities of creating new models of what you are doing,
okay,
understanding what you are doing in new ways, you always can use data
okay. Let me then jump into
if you understand the data. And uh, talking about KPIs, they can be good, but to make them good is one of the most difficult things you can do. Because I have quite some time called or used the acronym KPI to say key perversion indicator. The reason being that any KPI is a good reason, a good basis for a manager to look at how he can up his game in the company rather than to get the performance indicator really mean what it is meant to be, a way to see how the performance of the company is.
okay. Actually, my definition of KPI is again not from personal base. My definition of KPI is what business want to see. Because as we say, you know better than me that on a dashboard, statistics is maximum have 3 to 5 KPIs on a dashboard, then that will make more sense. So I'm definitely not talking about human KPI or employee KPI. I am talking about business KPI where you end up saying, hey, this is what I want to see, which will
Mhm.
help me generate more business or optimize that. I'm talking about those KPIs.
Yeah, and even those, if you focus on those 5 or 7, which usually is the absolute maximum because we can remember only 7 things at the same time
Yeah.
in our active memory. Um, um, if you bring back your whole business to 5 or 7 numbers,
Mm-hmm.
you ignore the full context.
Okay.
And yes, I think KPIs are good because they keep people looking at things, but you have actually to revisit the list of KPIs on a monthly basis at CEO level. But CEOs don't have time for that.
Now they will have OKRs
But they
and
should.
yeah. Yeah, see, again, I want to spend more time as you just disagreed with me. We want to discuss more onto it because that become more interesting for me. right? Because for me, as a data lover, I always want to create data architecture on top of business requirement. But as time passed, I learned, yes, you need to have a very solid framework, you need to have a solid architecture, but it should always start with business requirements. And that is where DSS or decision support system or KPIs comes. But you have brought a very good point here is due to AI or generative AI or XYZ AIs, it can also tell some kind of those KPIs or those indicators which you never thought about. They can
Exactly.
come up with something more. So I
Yeah.
think it can be an addition that, for example, you have come up with 100 KPIs for your dashboarding system, and then you have a AI which can tell you, hey, you have 100, but based on your business processes, you can add 10 more. So those will also become KPIs. Am I right in this direction?
Yes, I think the most important thing AIs are doing for us is letting us know about our cognitive bias.
Hmm.
So whatever I know, it's always less than let's say all the people in my company know, and they have different views on how things are. But an AI has a different way of creating those views, which also helps a lot to find new ways of looking at your data, KPIs, and your business. That's for sure interesting, an interesting part of the artificial intelligence.
Hmm.
And when looking at the sets of KPIs we have, we should always also look at which KPIs have we visited sufficiently to stop looking at them for some time,
Uh,
because your management can't look at everything.
yes.
That's
So
impossible.
let
So
me, yeah,
having 100 KPIs is great, but management focuses this week on these 10
yes, yes.
max or these
Yeah,
5.
yeah. That's why
Next
I'm.
week you move one out, you
Mhm.
move another in.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a new term called as strategy ops. One of the our panelists guy ops. So strategy, what I do, it's a very, very exciting and new thing for me as well. But this is what you are talking about. That it gives you a monitoring of all data and AI initiatives in your organization, and it gives you a complete picture what is working, what is not working, what is the priority, what is not priority, and you have to keep visiting that.
Yeah,
So I think that is what you're referring. You need to keep on top of it, and then let AI also tell you, hey, you have 100 KPIs. Out of 100 KPIs, these much are performing positive, these many are performing negative, and these are in neutral. You might have to replace neutral with the new ones,
yeah,
right? But here I can, as a devil's advocate, I can throw one more angle into it, right? That the moment you leash out AI to find out hidden things for you, right? Those hidden which you do not know. That is where you open the gate of compute to let AI use it and suggest you. But won't that become a expensive affair for you that you allow it to search something which you don't even, first of all, you don't know. Second, you don't know because you don't need it. If you don't need it, most of the time, if you don't need it, that's why you don't know, right? Because your business is still running without you don't know about it. So won't that become more expensive affair to let it go or let it run?
yeah. If you let it go freely, it will really kill your business by using too much
Yeah.
of your compute. Um, so you have to, and that is one of the issues with LLMs.
Yeah.
They run freely, and that makes them extremely costly. And the classical, God, wasn't expecting to say that word in combination with AI, but the classical AI, where you look for new models, is use case driven. So you know that something is happening, but you don't know why, or you want to have new ideas about the why, maybe. In those cases, you have a controlled set of data, a controlled situation where you can choose what you find interesting, and you get, and that was always normal. You get 40 suggestions that you say, yeah, I knew that one. And the 41st is, oh my God, I was really not thinking about that one.
Yeah.
And that's where value comes. And for that choice, you still need people.
Yeah.
And that doesn't change. That doesn't change with LLMs. That is what an AI can do for you. And also where an AI can fail, you can get only suggestions that were so obvious that you didn't need them.
So what we are saying here is it's good to have AI running on a OPEX model rather than on a CAPEX model. Because OPEX is something you can dedicate a certain amount. Okay, let AI use it. If I can get something out of it, it's a bonus for me. If I don't, I'm still fine. But because we know that AI will end up finding something for you, you have that separate budget park for it. Correct?
You could use it that way. That this sounds like having it always running. I would suggest to run it once every year, because you
Every
shouldn't you
yeah.
shouldn't change your policies every week, every day.
Mm.
You should be careful about that. That is something similar I discussed with a colleague of mine who was a very good statistician. He was looking at his statistics and he knew all his calculations. And one day he said, and I love that, um, if you don't have, if you can't see in a picture of a point cloud that something is off, then probably it is too expensive to change your business to fit your findings that you could track in statistics. So
Okay.
there has to be something quite obvious to make it valid to do something about how you work in your business.
Mm. So what we are saying here is if that something is so valuable, then you work on it, else let it go. You don't have
Yeah,
to you don't have to worry about everything which AI generates for you.
exactly. If you can't see it, it isn't there.
Correct. Okay.
But I think we covered a lot.
A lot.
So
I think for you and me, we can run this kind of discussion many an hours, right? I think we should have a follow-up session, maybe in a quarter or 6 months, whenever you
yeah,
have available time. Let's do that. It was a great session with you. I learned a lot, and
I
I double
enjoyed it and I loved your questions.
this pleasure is an honor, and to be with you with someone who has really done decades of work on, who has really spent their entire career on data.
Yeah,
So and
true.
thanks for disagreeing with a lot of my concepts, which we are still on the same page but looking from the different angles.
Yeah.
So again, thank you so much. I think have a good day, have a good weekend, and see you again.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.